Episode number 291, All Eyes in the Battle.
Ninth battle is over. Cain Lorifer is the winner.
The mechanical referee shouted those words, and a second later, the last of the blood champions of the purest path flashed toward the platform. Zima seemed eager to fight immediately, which made perfect sense. While the other blood champion did not hurt Cain, the fight did drain a significant portion of his energy pool and stamina. The High Blood Elder and Blood Duke exchanged glances as they saw Cain and Zima on the platform. Although the Integrationist Path won 9 battles, they only had one fighter, so the Purist Path only needed a single victory. Of course, everybody would mock them, and the stance of the Purist Path would certainly grow weaker, but they would still be the ones that would carry on with the final and most important part of the century ascendance of the Blood Moon. There was nothing the Blood Duke could do about the unfairness of this situation. The rules that allowed Cain to kill Jeremy without repercussions also forced him to win all 10 fights. Powerhouses of the Purist Path and Integrationist Path were not the only ones analyzing the battle between Cain and Zima. Blood Sea was an extremely important power in the collapsing lightning sector, so factions across the Empire were using different methods to watch the fight. In the Titan Tower of the Imperial Lightning Fort, a room with a large mirror showed Cain and Zima. There were 6 people. 5 were collapsing lightning pillars, and the last was Luther. Of course, among the pillars was Zarak, and there was a flash of disdain in his eyes.
HMPH, they really know no shame. Despite forcing Cain to fight 10 consecutive battles, they do not give him any time to rest.
Stay tuned to Empire.
There is no reason for the mighty people of the Blood Sea to give leeway to an outsider.
Luther spoke those words before showing a mocking smile.
I am sure those cowards justify their actions with those words. I am surprised that the Blood Duke is not interfering on Cain's behalf and allowing things to carry on.
Zarak's eyes narrowed as he heard that last part. He was also confused by the actions of the Blood Duke. His suspicion began when he saw that this one had not shown up to rescue Cain and Surin. As a Titan, the Blood Duke should be much faster than he and Bloodless One, yet this one never appeared.
Many have forgotten, but the reason the Blood Duke was able to rise to his current position was not his brute power but his schemes. I am sure that man is planning something, and he clearly doesn't care about the safety of Cain.
Olivian, the second collapsing lightning pillar, spoke calmly, but there was a flash of killing intent in his eyes. The collapsing lightning pillars present began to look at each other, and there was a murderous light in their eyes. Cain Lorifer was a divine prodigy that saw the Imperial Lightning Force as his home and the army as his family, so it was only a matter of time before he became one of the pillars. Although they might have differences and sometimes fight with each other, when it came to external threats and dangers, the collapsing lightning pillars could act as a single unified force. Luther saw the aura in the room and knew he needed to intervene. If the 9 pillars were to march together, then they could unleash a massacre on the Blood Sea. While it was true that the Blood Sea was a formidable power with 2 titans, the first pillar of the collapsing lightning sector was a killing machine that had already murdered more gods than you could count with both hands.
The collapsing Lightning Duke has forbidden our movements. Cain chose to return to the Blood Sea and knew the dangers. Unless Major Lorifer explicitly asks for our help or the tournament rules are broken, we are not allowed to mobilize our forces.
Zarak sighed and nodded. It was Cain's decision to return to the Blood Sea, and he should face the consequences of his actions. Far from the Imperial Lightning Fort, in a remote corner of the collapsing lightning sector, there was an immense castle. In a room of that magnificent structure, 2 men were watching a crystal species that showed Cain and Zima. One of the men was Jonathan, and the other was someone Cain would have recognized as the person from the Saint Void State technique. The man that managed to perform that flawless assassination of a wave king in Broad, daylight in the middle of a crown, when he was just a wave champion was looking at the crystal sphere with sharp eyes.
So this is the boy that has my daughter's corpse. I must admit his assassination skills are very high for a neophyte.
No ill will or disdain could be heard when the white-haired man spoke about Cain as a neophile. Besides, he was right. Unlike members of the Egon family, who took assassination as the main path of their battle and lifestyle, Cain only used it as a tool.
Yes, my lord. Although he doesn't have the heart of an assassin, there is no hesitation in his mind when it comes to killing. Other than young Lord, I am afraid that no one in the Egon family's young generation can compare with his talent in Void State.
The man silently nodded. He saw how Kane performed a flawless assassination during the first tournament battle, so there was no question about his skills.
Anyway, we must be ready. If I am right before the century ascendance of the Blood Moon ends, we will have a lot of work.
Jonathan's eyes widened as he understood the hidden meaning of the man's words. He turned toward the crystal sphere, and there was focus on his eyes as he did not want to lose anything. Millions of kilometers away from the collapsing lightning sector, a young man watched the battle between Kane and Zima. Unlike the powerhouses from the Egon family and Imperial Lightning fought, he did not really care what would happen with the Blood Sea, and his only focus was Kane. Magnus Hellblaze's eyes were cold as he stared at Kane's figure. Very few people in the world could match his talent, but Kane was one of them. He did not need to prove himself superior to others, and a good relationship could have grown between the two, but Levi's past and Amos' actions made it inconceivable. If he perished in the incoming turmoil, everything would be great. However, if he manages to rise above, I will have to start looking for ways to handle things quickly. The sound of a moving door drew Magnus' attention, and saw a middle-aged man walking toward him. It was the same Wave King that attempted to force his way into the unique dimension of Blade Mountain.
Young Lord, by order of the Hellblazer Duke, I bring you the Divine Fire Lotus as a reward for rising to Blood Champion with Void Marrow.
The Wave King kneeled before taking a small red chest and presenting it to Magnus. His eyes showed a flash of greed since he knew that the Divine Fire Lotus was an incredible treasure, even for a Wave King. Still, he immediately erased that emotion since he was aware of what had happened with the enemies of the young man. Magnus smiled as he stawed the small red chest and waved his hand, signaling the Wave King to leave since he did not want company while looking at Kane's fight. The Wave King stood up, but did not immediately leave since he had another task.
His Highness is asking whether or not you will attend your brother's funeral. It's a hearted.
Magnus burst into laughter as he heard that question before shaking his head.
Don't you think it would be in bad taste if the murderer attended the funeral?
The Wave King trembled when he heard that. It was a surprise since everybody knew what happened, but could not believe that Magnus would just say it out loud. There were only two reasons someone would confess such a crime. They were stupid and did not understand the risk or know that nothing would happen to them. Either way, the Wave Kings erased those words from his mind, since he could not survive the schemes and tribulations of the fight for power among the young generation of the Hellblazer family.
I will tell His Highness you cannot attend due to your cultivation, young lord.
Magnus shrugged his shoulder and signaled the man to leave, which he did immediately. It was just a battle between Wave Champion, but even Titans were focusing on it, and whatever they expected to see, it would be even more impressive.
Zima Extir, are you ready? Yes, I am. Kane Lorifer, are you ready? Yes, I am. Fight.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 292, Clash of Ego Waves. Kane and Zima looked into each other's eyes, and there was a coldness in them. The battle had officially started, but neither made a move since the first clash would not be physical. Red and golden fields emerged from the minds of both blood champions, like tsunamis, and lunged toward the one with insatiable might and power. As soon as the golden and red force fields collided, the superior ego wave showed itself immediately. Zima's willpower belonged to an early Wave King, which was terrific for a 17-year-old man in every sense, but Kane's was way above that level. Kane had already evolved his willpower to the middle Wave King level before coming to the Blood Sea, and his tribulation with the Wave King assassin made it explode, touching upon the late stage and second realm. Solemn expression appeared in all the powerhouses across the Empire that saw the might of that red force field. If there was one aspect in which Kane Lorifer stood above all other geniuses of the young generation in the collapsing lightning sector, was his willpower. Having an inborn ego eternal matrix and experiencing over a dozen life-and-death trials had pushed the young man's ego wave to the point that it would soon earn him the right to call himself a powerhouse at merely 16 years of age. Unlike the rest of the people that stared at Kane's ego wave with a solemn attitude, Shura showed a radiant smile. She knew just how hard Kane had fought to evolve that red force field, and seeing him unleash it made her happy since that was his purest state. Of course, the powerhouses of the integrationist path were thrilled to see the might of Kane's willpower. After all, he was on their side, and this was just more than a fight. It was a clash of thoughts, and what better to define the correct path than a greater resolution and determination? Zima saw how the red force field could push back his golden ego wave effortlessly. But just as it was about to be drowned by the willpower of his opponent, a smile appeared on his face.
Crack it.
It was as if a seal had broken inside his mind. The next instant, the golden force field exploded with power, gaining the ability to stop the advance of Kane's ego wave before pushing it back. Surprise and confusion appeared in the people that saw the increase in power of the golden force field, since they did not understand precisely how it happened. Even powerhouses like Blood Duke and Bloodless One were shocked by the burst in the ego wave from Zima. The knowledge about the ego eternal path of power was deep, but they were confused by the sudden turn of events. Still, they saw how now it was Zima's ego wave, the one in the lead. Kane saw how the golden force field was pushing his ego wave when he took a deep breath and closed his eyes as he remembered the feeling he had during the fight against the Wave King assassin. When he opened his eyes again, the red light in these exploded, generating a quality improvement in the red force field that seemed to be on the brink of evolution. Zima's eyes widened when he saw the might that Kane's ego wave could reach, and soon the coldness and killing intent in his heart exploded. The red force field pushed the golden to the middle of the battle arena, and both began to ascend into the sky. They were like nearly 5,000 meters long dragons, clashing and rising into the air.
Rumbled.
Storm clouds began to appear in the sky due to the clash of willpower. Although ego wave was immaterial, the reason why it could pass through solid objects with ease, once the willpower of life evolved to a high enough level, it could affect the wave. Its most basic deployment at this point was to use it as fuel for the astral wave or essence wave. But once your mastery reached a high enough level, you could manipulate the life wave in the air, using the world as your energy pool. The willpower of both youths was so immense that their clash could wreak havoc on the life wave in the sky and change the weather. Back in the Imperial Lightning Fort, the Pillars and Luther were seeing the clash between the willpowers of Kane and Zima with a frown on their faces. The mirror did not only show images, since it also allowed the people that saw it to perceive the energy and forces unleashed by the people in it. Zarak's eyes were sharp as he focused on Zima's ego wave.
You also feel it, right?
The one that spoke was Akira, the essence wave cultivator that granted Kane his license as a hypnosis master. Her voice was solemn as she stared at Zarak. Luther and the rest of the Pillars focused on the youngest of them. While Zarak was the weakest in terms of wave cultivation, his evolution and mastery over the ego eternal path of power was the highest, with him already taking a step into the third realm. Zarak did not answer immediately, and took focus for a long time on the golden force field before opening his mouth.
I have no idea how he managed to hide his ego wave and just unleash it with such strength the next second. It might be a unique skill I am unaware of.
The ninth pillar did not pretend he had all the answers since he was far from reaching the peak of the ether in the ego eternal path of power, so it might be that Zima just had a unique skill, and that was it. However, there was something disturbing.
His willpower is old.
It took a moment, but they all frowned when Luther and the Pillars heard that. Age did not limit the might of your willpower, but it determined its ancientness. After all, it was based on your life experiences, and it did not make sense it would be older than you.
Cheating.
Olivian, the second pillar, spoke with a cold voice. He was not a master in the ego eternal path of power, but having older willpower than your actual age was like having an older brain. It should not be possible. Zarak considered things for a long time before answering.
Most likely, but I cannot offer any proof.
Luther and the Pillars sighed as they heard that. Even if Zima was cheating, if they could not prove it, they could do nothing to help Kane.
This battle will be hard. Let's hope that Major Lorifer can rise as he has always done in the past.
Luther spoke as he stared at the mirror, along with the pillars. Storm clouds had already expanded for dozens of kilometers in the sky, covering the entire amphitheater in darkness. None of the fighters had thrown a punch, but people could not take their eyes off the battle arena and did not even dare to blink. Kane focused solely on his ego wave, but while he unleashed his willpower, the absolute life form system had another mission. Scanning target. Scan of target completed. Name, Zima Xtia. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, astral rebirth, early wave champion. Lineage, wave talent, low tier 8. Stats. Strength, 17.5. Agility, 23.1. Vitality, 22.9. Wave, 22.3. Blood energy, 26.5. Marrow washing, 100% completion. Blood rebirth, blue blood state. Although Kane and Zima were both early wave champions, the latter was at the peak of that stage, while the first evolved less than a month ago. When it came to a clash between geniuses of the same level, those small differences in cultivation significantly impacted the battle. Kane was accustomed to relying on his ego wave and skills to overcome stronger opponents, but Zima had the same level of willpower and skills. He could handle the physical differences, but the disparity between their energy pools would make the fight much harder. It made sense. After all, Zima was older by a year, meaning he had more time to increase his astral wave and the number of blood runes. Of course, none of that truly mattered to Kane. So what if his opponent was older than him? Was he supposed to use it as an excuse in case of his defeat? What about all the people he manages to kill thanks to the absolute life form system? Should they come back to life, since the fight was not?
Fair is.
Only a coward would search for those justifications to feel about their defeat. This was a fight, and the only thing that mattered in the end was who would win.
Boom.
A lightning bolt landed right in the middle of the battle arena, marking the beginning of the true fight. Kane and Zima made their astral wave burst as they flashed toward the other full of killing intent. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 293, Devastating Onslaught. Red lightning covered Zima's body as his skin adopted a crimson metallic color beneath his white armor, and his hands morphed into blood gem claws. Kane's skin also turned red due to activating second gear as an armor of the same color covered his body. His hands became blood gem claws, and his wave cloak began to vibrate due to the power of sonic armor, increasing his defenses.
Boom.
Their right fists collided in the middle of the battle arena, a sonic boom emerging from Kane's punch while a lightning blast arose in Zima's. There was no need for weapons. For warriors that trained blood hand, their punches were the most destructive artifacts of all, having the ability to twist silver artifacts with their bare hands. Coldness appeared in the duo's eyes as they saw that neither could overcome the other, and as they retracted their fists, they adopted a similar battle stance, raising their arms and spreading their legs.
Boom. 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 Boom.
Kane and Zima both used Blood Flow Fury, exchanging punches and kicks in the middle of the battle arena, trying to push the other away. Zima's domain over the Blood Flow Fury was surprisingly high, as if he had trained it for decades. That, plus his superb speed, allowed him to have the upper hand in terms of battle skill. However, while Kane's mastery over Blood Flow Fury was lower, he seemed capable of predicting the Zima's moves, reacting just in time to dodge or block the blows. And while he could not surpass his opponent's speed, the strength of his punches and kicks was unmatched due to the torque of his body. Kane had to admit that he fell behind Zima when it came to battle skills. Luckily, he had Virtual Sight, and the AI chip module already deeply comprehended Zima's body and Blood Flow Fury, so the predictions were very precise. Zima sent a vicious kick toward Kane's head, but this one was able to block it with his right arm before responding with his left elbow. Kane's elbow could break a hole into a thick steel plate like glass, but Zima managed to protect his chest using his right arm. Every time one sent an attack, the other would either dodge or block it before sending their own. There was sublime precision and control over their body movements, as expected from warriors that train their bodies to reach the peak. Zima's eyes narrowed as he saw that Cain was able to keep up with his skills, but soon he began to smile as he activated 4,000% wave burst. The astral wave exploded with power, enhancing the wave cloak, which in turn improved every aspect of Zima's body. His speed, strength, and defenses rose exponentially. Usually, even great geniuses would have a problem performing 1,000% wave burst, but someone with such powerful willpower as Zima could generate a much greater energy output. Cain immediately felt pressured as Zima's blows became faster and stronger, and he could only answer in the same way, also raising his wave burst to 4,000%. The strength the duo's body began to unleash reached the standard of a late wave champion due to their bursting astral wave. Of course, there would be repercussions for such outlandish energy output, but having evolved to wave champion with void marrow and practicing a saint technique as blood refinement art, their constitution could handle much more.
Boom. 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 Boom.
Awe and admiration appeared in the people of the amphitheater watching the fight, as the skill and power of the duo were truly superb. Streams of air covered Cain's body due to the constant rotation of his body, while Zima's lightning pushed his reflexes to an incredible level.
Boom. Boom.
A blast of astral wave emerged from Cain and Zima. The duo increased their wave burst, this time reaching 6,000%. Now their physical abilities could compare to peak wave champions. Shura watched the fight with excitement as she saw that Cain could keep up with Zima, and she was sure that he would soon overcome the enemy, just like always. However, the young girl soon noticed the somber expressions of the powerhouses around her. Raiden's grandmother noticed Shura's confusion and sighed briefly before speaking to the young girl.
That young man's skill and ability are truly superb, but he just went through 9 battles. Even if he did not receive any wound, he must have already consumed over 75% of his astral wave. Using such an immense energy output would drain him extremely fast.
Boom. Boom.
Shura's focus returned to the battle as she saw that the wave burst of Cain and Zima rose once again, this time to 8,000%. She focused on Cain's valiant face and could not help but clench her fists. Shura knew that Cain could not reduce his energy output, but he would not last much longer if he carried on like this. Knowing that Cain had to fight alone due to their weakness and inability to hide their whereabouts from assassins made Shura clench her fists so hard that they nearly bleed. Cain could imagine the thoughts in the powerhouse's minds. He had known Zima's plan since the moment he understood that all the blood champions only fought with the single goal of draining his energy and stamina. The exchange between the blows of Zima and Cain carried on with monstrous intensity until suddenly Cain's wave cloak trembled, losing its bursting state. That was a clear sign that Cain's astral wave had reached its limit and could no longer maintain such monstrous energy output. Zima's showed a cold smile as his eyes glowed with savagery. The instability in Cain's wave cloak meant a severe decrease in this one's speed and defense, something he was ready to exploit. Over 80% of Zima's astral wave concentrated on his right fist as he sent it toward Cain's head with all his strength. It was the time to give the finishing blow. Just as Zima's fist was ready to break every bone in Cain's face, he saw a smile appear on this one's face. A bad feeling assaulted the heart of the young blood champion of the purest path, and the next thing he saw was Cain's astral wave exploding with even more power than before.
10,000%.
Shock appeared in not just Zima, but also every other powerhouse that saw the battle. Cain's energy pool was larger than normal early wave champions, but was not monstrous either, and it should have depleted by this point, so they could not understand how there was so much astral wave left on him. A meaningful light appeared in the eyes of Bloodless One and Zarak as they remembered the energy that flooded Cain's body for nearly a month and that emerged from his soul dimension. The duo was right. Cain did not care about Zima's plan because the gluttony module had been filling his body with energy and vitality from the start of the tournament. Cain had chosen to project the image of exhaustion and energy depletion, so Zima would lower his guard and send an attack full of openings, exposing his body. Zima could do nothing to stop Cain from dodging his fist and landing an uppercut on his jaw, sending his body flying into the sky while making his brain tremble inside his skull. Cain would not stop and rose, making the astral wave focus on his arms and legs, especially his fists, feet, elbows, and knees.
Flowing first.
A barrage of blows landed point blank on Zima.
Tempest kick.
Enjoy new stories from Freeweb Novel. Several kicks landed one after another on Zima's chest, pushing him even higher.
Crimson elbows and knees.
Elbows that had transformed into blood gems connected on Zima, cracking his white armor and making this one puke blood. Zima had risen over 3,000 meters into the air when he finally saw Cain vanish from beneath him. Yet, his instincts screamed terror as he felt two fists gently landing on his back.
Sonic cannon. BOOMs.
A massive shockwave spread across the sky, splitting the storm clouds apart as a mighty sonic cannon exploded point blank on Zima's chest, making this one puke a mouthful of blood while his body crashed into the ground at supersonic speed.
BOOMs.
The battle arena trembled when Zima's body crashed into it. Blood was everywhere in the young man's body as he used what little strength was left to turn around and look into the sky. Cain was still in the air and saw that Zima's eyes were about to lose consciousness. He did not understand why this one had yet to surrender, but killing intent exploded in his heart since it was his chance to make things even. With Zima, there would be two blood champions of the Purith Path that perished, avenging Raiden and Martin.
Boom.
Sonic booms emerged from Cain's feet as he pushed his body to Mach 10 while his knees glowed with red light. He was ready to blast Zima's skull to pieces. However, just as he made his way down, Cain's vision was able to capture something. He saw the faces of the powerhouses of the Purist Path. While most were full of dread and panic, the High Blood Elder was still calm. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 294, Hypersonic Speed. Cain felt that something was wrong. He was just half a second away from blasting Zima's skull, but he jumped to the right without hesitation. The instant that happened, the eyes of Zima, who seemed to verge into unconsciousness, regained their focus, and he opened his mouth.
Boom.
An incredibly powerful dark lightning cannon emerged from Zima's mouth, rising into the sky with a might similar to a Wave King's spell. Shock and awe appeared in the eyes of everybody seeing the battle. The battle was supposed to have reached its end after Cain's devastating onslaught, but not only was Zima able to react, but he unleashed an attack that could have threatened the life of a Wave King. Even more shocking, it was a long-range attack, something an astral wave champion like Zima should not be able to perform. Cain's expression was solemn as he landed on the battle arena, more than 100 meters away from Zima. He had managed to avoid most of the damage, but did not come unscratched since his left arm was scotched. A sharp light appeared in Cain's eyes as he saw Zima standing up. The damage that his last barrage did should have incapacitated this one, but it was clearly not the case. Zima managed to stand up as the wounds on his body stabilized, but that was far from all. His body grew larger and more muscular as scales covered his arms and part of his chest, and his pupils turned reptilian. It did not take long for him to reach 2.5 meters tall, and his arms and legs grew twice their original size. People grew confused by Zima's physical change. The Empire had draconic bloodlines that could explain Zima's transformation, but he was a member of the Blood Sea and had a Blood Sea lineage. Cain's eyes grew sharp as he stared at Zima and immediately understood the key behind his transformation and the burst in his physical strength.
So that is your alter ego's power. Through your visualization technique, you see yourself as a dragon.
Most people were still confused, but those that had already reached the first realm of the ego eternal path of power and awakened their alter egos understood what was happening with Zima. The alter ego might be a manifestation of your willpower, but through a visualization technique, one could harvest their power. It unleashed its force in the soul, the essence of someone's existence, so inducing a physical transformation was very normal. Powerhouses from both sides look at Zima with wonder since even for Wave Kings, triggering the power of the alter ego was extremely hard, and most of those at the early stage could not do it. Not to mention that even for those that could trigger the power of their alter egos, it only worked as an auxiliary technique due to the disparity between their cultivation and willpower. Clearly, Zima was not the case, and the power that his alter ego granted him was his trump card.
Hahaha, you are right. I was always fond of the tales of dragons of the old world, beasts of power and destruction that obey no one and rule above all. Since that is a perfect description, why don't I become a dragon myself?
Zima showed a cold smile as he spoke to Cain, his body bursting with strength and vitality.
I did not want to show this power, but you forced me. Your instincts are top-notch, being able to detect my attack so fast. Zima paused at this point as he focused on Cain's scorched left arm.
But not fast enough.
Cain noticed the mockery in Zima's voice, but he just smiled back.
There is no need to worry about this minor wound that will heal in just a moment.
Powerhouses could not help but frown as they heard Cain's words. Although the damage to his left arm was not catastrophic since the lightning only scorched the skin and muscles, it would still take a long time to heal. However, the next second, everybody saw a golden flame burst out of Cain's left arm, and the damaged tissues began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. After the burst of his willpower during the life-and-death battle against the Wave King assassin, the Sun Seed had grown more powerful. Although it did not gain another ability, the power of Radiance of Life evolved to the point it no longer just circulated through the inside of his body. Read New Adventures at Freewib novel. Cain raised his left arm and clenched it, showing the strength of the extremity. In less than 20 seconds, all the damage the arm had taken vanished. A new wave of shock assaulted the powerhouses when they saw the golden flame of Cain. They figured it was the young man's alter ego, and its power was not any less impressive than Zima's.
I guess it is time for the second round.
Cain's words filled Shura and the people of the integrationist path with excitement. The battle had already been amazing before, but now that the duo unleashed their full power, it would grow to a whole new level. Zima saw the amazing healing ability of Cain, and while his body had grown much stronger, it was not like he had completely recovered from the point-blank sonic cannon. Yet the smile on his face only grew wider.
Although it would have been interesting to see what happens when an unstoppable force clashes with an unmovable object, I will pass.
Zima's words confused Cain, as he did not understand the source of his enemy's confidence, but he got an answer the next second. Strange inscriptions appeared in the center of Zima's chest and soon expanded all over his body. Cain's eyes widened as he saw those inscriptions. He had never seen them before in a battle but had read about them. Those strange letters were runes, and what was covering Zima's body was a runic formation. As soon as Zima triggered, a strange power began to manifest in the battle arena, and blue lightning arcs began to course through his body. Those blue lightning arcs were not the result of a spell, but the manifestation of the power of the laws. Just like genetic coders can create wave viruses that tap into the genetic power of an individual and grant them unique abilities, rune masters can engrave runic formations that summon the power of the laws. Rune crafting was a not well-known profession in the collapsing lightning sector, and the same could be said about the Empire as a whole. The inheritance of the Godsailor humankind regarding genetic coding was superb, but was only subpar regarding runes. Even if Cain's knowledge about runic formations was shallow, he knew that only a saint runic formation could summon the power of the laws. Of course, runic formations also needed energy to activate, but this one seemed to work perfectly with blood energy. The Blood Duke and Bloodless One stared at the High Blood Elder after they saw that Saint Rune inscription on Zima, and there was no doubt in their minds now that this one was in cahoots with the organization. Unfortunately, the duo had no real proof of that, and shouting accusations without them would only make them look weak. Cain was also aware that there was something odd about that runic inscription, but something else was bothering him. With all of Zima's skill, this one could have chosen to have a direct fight from the beginning, but instead chose a path that would have allowed him to keep all those secrets. A strong opponent was hard, but a scheming opponent was truly dangerous. Trying to figure out Zima's intentions and secrets would be a waste of time, so Cain only took a deep breath as he pushed his focus to the limit, ready to face anything thrown at him. Zima noticed Cain's battle stance and smiled before opening his mouth.
Let's begin the final round. A thunderous sonic boom emerged from where Zima stood just an instant ago, making the ears of the people in the amphitheater tremble. However, that was nothing compared with the shock Cain felt as he saw that the massive body of Zima was already in front of him, sending a hook right to his head. Time seemed to slow down as Cain's brain was able to analyze Zima's condition. He saw how streams of electrically charged plasma covered the figure of this one, and that could only mean one thing: hypersonic speed. When a body reaches a high enough speed, they break the chemical bonds that hold nitrogen and oxygen together, generating streams of electrically charged plasma. That speed goes by the name of hypersonic speed. In ether, the density of the air is much higher than that of the old world, so to reach hypersonic speed, you need to move much faster than just Mach 5 or 5 times the speed of sound. Hypersonic speed in ether requires your body to move at Mach 20. That was nearly 7,000 meters per second. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 295, The Red King Axe.
Boom.
A powerful blast echoed across the battle arena as Zima connected his fist to Cain. It had so much power that it seemed like a missile had just landed on its target. Everybody turned toward Cain since that blow was directed at his head, and it had more than enough power to be lethal for a wave champion. Luckily, while Cain could not dodge the blow, he managed to use his right arm as a shield. The forearm where Zima's punch landed immediately swollen due to the severe trauma, but golden flames soon fixed the damage. Cain felt blood leaking from the corner of his mouth. Even after blocking the punch, it had enough strength to do internal damage. His eyes grew sharp as he went through the attack on his mind. Zima's punch lacked any technique, which made sense since such an absurd speed was more than what a wave champion's nervous system could smoothly handle. However, it mattered very little since the speed was something Cain could barely dodge, and its momentum was so much it nearly broke his arms.
Ha, not bad. I thought everything would be over already, but as people say, cockroaches are very tenacious. I wonder how long you will manage to last.
Boom.
Another powerful sonic boom emerged as Zima flashed toward Cain, this time performing a downward kick that seemed capable of splitting a building in half. Virtual sight was useless at this point since the AI chip module predictions were not fast enough, so Cain could only act by instinct. He managed to move back just in time to avoid the kick from landing on his head, but that left him open to Zima's next attack. Enjoy new stories from Freeweb Novel.
Oh,
A silent scream emerged from Cain's mouth as Zima's punch landed point-blank on his chest, pushing out all the air in his lungs and making him puke blood. That was just the start. For the next 30 seconds, the battle was completely unilateral. Cain did his best to handle the onslaught, but Zima was simply too fast. Powerhouses on the integrationist path clenched their fists as they saw how the battle was going. Cain's talent could be considered higher than Zima's, but he was overwhelmed by the Blood Champion's resources. Zima's power after activating the runic inscription was simply too high. Of course, it would not last long since he would soon run out of energy, but it was evident to everybody that Cain's body would break first. Bloodless One and the Blood Duke stared coldly at the High Blood Elder. There was no other way to see this battle as one that would be won by external interest, something the purest path was essentially against. However, no matter how much they hated the High Blood Elder's hypocrisy, they could do nothing about it. Treasures were considered part of an individual's power, and since Zima could trigger the runic inscription, he had the right to enjoy its augmentations. Shira's eyes were distressed as she saw how Cain's body took more and more punishment. His body would have stopped moving long ago if it weren't for his golden flame. Faster, faster, faster.
Cain kept repeating that word in his mind as he attempted to push his body to a level where he could respond to Zima's onslaught, but it was impossible. Something could not emerge from nothing, and his speed would not rise out of nowhere just because he wanted it to happen. Rage and unwillingness burned in Cain's eyes as he did all he could to stay in the fight, but the damage was becoming too much even for radiance of life. Not to mention that the powers of the Sun Seed were not endless, and he was consuming them at a staggering speed.
Boom.
Cain managed to block a blow to his stomach, but the potency of the attack sent him flying away. Still in midair, He saw Zima catching up to him and landing a knee strike right in his sternum, making him feel all his ribs shattered at the same time. The strike sent Cain to the edge of the battle arena, and while his body was still standing, he was looking down as if he no longer had the strength to raise his head. Zima's smile was full of coldness and viciousness. It was clear he had enjoyed playing around with Cain, but it was finally time to end things.
Outsider, you gave me a very good time, so I will be merciless. Get down on your knees, and I will allow you to surrender.
The mockery in Zima's voice was clear to everybody, but there was nothing Shura and the others could do. Of course, Cain did not have to kneel to surrender. Those words were just Zima's way of making fun of the defeated enemy. Zima was not actually expecting Cain to kneel, but neither did he expect this one to say nothing and keep looking down.
If that is what you want.
His killing intent exploded as he flashed toward Cain, ready to blast the head of this one open. Shock and anxiousness appeared in the eyes of Shura and many others as they saw that Cain was not surrendering. Even if he lost this last battle, there was no shame in accepting defeat, so they did not understand why he just stood silent when death was near. Zima was also surprised, but only smiled as he visualized what would happen once his fists reached Cain's head. However, just as he was in front of the enemy and ready to fire the punch, pure dread appeared on his face. Immediately, Zima stopped his attack and flashed away from Cain, reaching all the way to the other edge of the battle arena. His breathing was rough, as he could not stop his body from trembling. Nothing short of absolute confusion permeated the mind of everybody seeing the battle, since they did not understand what had just happened. Zima was ready to end the fight in Cain's life a second ago, but now he was as far from this one as possible, with pure terror on his face. Zima could not explain what was happening since even he failed to understand it. He was about to kill Cain when this one raised his face, showing eyes that belonged to no man. Those eyes had red pupils full of disdain, not to a man, but to the world, as if everything was beneath them. There was no way to describe them other than the eyes of a king.
Where am I? What is happening?
Cain did not understand what was happening. He found himself in a place full of shadows inside a red humanoid body without any distinctive features. In front of him was a golden humanoid, just like him, without any distinctive physical characteristics whatsoever. Before he could even try to comprehend what this place was, his body moved on its own, attacking the golden humanoid. Cain could feel everything the body did but could not control it. It was similar to his experience with his memories of his past life. The battle between the red and golden humanoids was pretty simple, only consisting of physical attacks. Cain's body was exponentially faster and stronger than the golden humanoid, but no matter how hard he fought or what trick he deployed, he never came even close to landing an attack. Somehow the golden humanoid could not only dodge all of Cain's attacks, but also counter them with flawless precision. The battle only lasted a few seconds, and the red humanoid body received no damage despite all the counters. He stopped his attack and clasped his hands, and the golden humanoid responded the same. After that, the red and golden humanoids sat beside each other and began meditating. Cain still lacked any form of control, but he was able to hear words while knowledge was being engraved inside his soul. While Cain was in that wonderful state, Apex stared at the sun seed. There was a frown on his face when he saw waves of energy emerging from the dark side of the alter ego. Apex's power was great enough to understand that those were broken memories that could not affect Cain in any way to reveal information he should not know. In the end, those memories would only make Cain stronger and not proportionate any help for the Red King. The golden humanoid turned back and stared at the gargantuan gate, covered in chains of white-black lightning and dark purple flames.
What are you trying to do?
The absolute life form system's origin involved forces greater than those that formed ether, and as the system spirit, Apex's wisdom was something no human in the world could match. Yet the golden humanoid did not dare to even speculate about the schemes a monster like the Red King could elaborate.
Ah, brat, I can only count on you to keep growing stronger regardless of the temptations in the future. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 296, The Flow. Zima was able to stop his body trembling, and a sense of shame and embarrassment replaced the fear in his heart. People were only looking at him with confusion, but those eyes were full of mockery for him.
You damn brat. boom.
A powerful sonic boom accompanied Zima's voice as he flashed at full speed toward Kane, channeling all his strength in his right fist. It was clear that he would not stop this time.
Knew of.
Shura shouted as she saw Zima's fist about to land on Kane's head, killing him. There was a pressure in her heart she could not understand, and she wanted nothing more than to jump into the battle arena, but it was not possible.
BOOMs.
A massive shockwave spread across the battle arena, and blood tainted the ground, but it was not Kane's. Silence reigned in the amphitheater as they saw how Kane sent Zima flying away while puking blood. Wave Warriors and Wave Champion did not understand what happened since it was too fast for them. Only Wave Kings could see the exchange, but that did not diminish the shock in their hearts. The ones that saw it clearer than everybody else were the Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and the High Blood Elder. None of them could believe it, but it happened. Zima's punch was about to reach Kane's head when this one moved and responded with a counter that sent him flying away while puking blood. Up to a second ago, Kane had barely been able to block Zima's attack, but now he could perform counters. The trio could not understand what kind of monster the young man was. The people on the Blood Sea were not the only ones shocked by what they had just seen. Those in the Titan Tower of the Imperial Lightning Fort were also trying to understand how Kane did that. None of them could figure out how Kane's speed rose to such a ridiculous level from one moment to another.
His alter ego.
Olivian asked Zarak, since that was the only possible explanation in his mind. Zarak was about to negate it since Kane's alter ego was focused on regeneration, but he then remembered the duality of that crimson sphere.
I don't know.
There was no way Zarak would reveal Kane's secret, but he was honestly confused and did not understand what was happening. Solemn expressions appeared in the pillars as they heard that and nodded, focusing on the mirror. Luther stared at Kane for a moment before using his AI chip to communicate with the collapsing Lightning Duke. In the castle of the Egon family, Jonathan was looking at the crystal sphere with awe. Even for him, it would have been hard to perform that counter, yet Kane, who was just an early Wave Champion, could do it.
That boy's speed is the same as before.
Jonathan was surprised by those words, and he turned to the patriarch of the Egon family with confusion.
Then how did he counter that attack?
If there wasn't an increase in Kane's speed, then Jonathan could not understand how this one managed to counter Zima's punch.
Kane started moving before Zima even sent that punch, positioning himself in the perfect position to dodge it and send a counter. He was able to predict his opponent's movements before they even started.
Jonathan's eyes widened as he turned toward Kane. If those words were right, it was even more impressive than moving at a higher speed.
That boy, he is truly something.
A smile appeared in the man as he focused on the crystal sphere, with renowned interest in his eyes. Kane's eyes were shaking as he looked around him, trying to calm his heart. The fact that he sent Zima flying away with a counter mattered very little to him since he was having a hard time even thinking right now due to the state of the world. Everything was glowing. He could feel the movements of the earth, the dance of the winds, the waves of the sea, and that was just the beginning. People became a tapestry of colors and shades, as he could perceive the movement of their skin, muscles, bones, and tendons. All things in the universe are composed of particles that vibrate at specific frequencies. Once you comprehend that, you can understand their patterns and how to interpret them. Those words resonated in Kane's mind, along with waves of knowledge and insight that he could not even describe. He interacted with that golden figure in his past life, and this one taught him something unique.
The flow.
That was the name of the technique that Kane could learn due to the memories of his past self. Of course, he had just attained a shallow understanding, and it would be long before he could reach the flow's zenith. Kane focused on Zima and could now see the young man's every move before this one did it. It was not easy and put his brain under tremendous stress, but he only smiled. Finally, Kane had found a way to win this fight.
You little bastard.
Zima shouted in rage as he rose from the ground and cleaned the blood out of his mouth. His eyes were full of anger and confusion since he did not understand what just happened.
I will kill you. Boom.
A massive sonic boom echoed across the amphitheater as Zima flashed toward Kane and unleashed an onslaught of punches. Each of those attacks had a power and speed that no wave champion could counter, but Kane could move his head from one side to the other, dodging everything. Kane's pupils began to contract as the world around him turned dark, allowing his focus on Zima to reach its peak. That was an extremely dangerous situation since he could only hear and see the opponent before him, but it should not be a problem since this was a tournament battle. Zima clenched his teeth as he attacked with all he had, but his attacks could not touch Kane. It was as if this one could read his mind and dodge everything he launched. It did not take long for the evasion to turn into counters, with Kane landing blow after blow on Zima's face, slowly pushing this one back. The people on Bloodsea and all those around the Empire were baffled by what they saw. Kane Lorifer was already an extraordinary genius with a destiny that surpassed the average Wave King, but he had evolved into something much greater. Under the eyes of the entire Godslayer humankind empire, his destiny was rising to the level of gods and titans. Kane pulled Zima to the other edge of the battle arena one punch at a time. His eyes were bleeding, and there was a beeping sound in his ears due to the brain damage, but that only made his smile brighter. Zima's face was bloody, and he was already reaching his end since the runic inscription had already drained over 90% of his energy. The power of his alter ego was also running out, and it was just a matter of time before he was finally defeated. This cannot happen. All my plans and sacrifices are going to waste for a little child. Zima could not believe what was happening and that he could do nothing to stop it. He had planned for such a long time, and now all of it would fail due to a kid he had never heard of before.
Impossible.
That shout was the last thing Zima did before his knees could no longer endure the punishment and caved in. Kane's bloody eyes burst with killing intent as he was ready to send a downward kick at the top of Zima's head.
I surrender.
Unfortunately for Kane, Zima was faster and surrendered before he could perform the attack. Due to the state of his senses, Kane could not hear the mechanical referee's voice, but he was sure that he had attained victory. A cold light appeared in Kane's eyes as he stared at Zima's kneeling body before turning around. Zima's eyes showed a poisonous hatred as he saw Kane turn around, and his energy burst as he sent a punch to the back of this one's head. The rules of the tournament stopped mattering a long time ago for Zima, and the only thing he cared about right now was to kill Kane. Despite his rage and killing intent, Zima had managed to hide it all, so there was no way Kane could dodge it. Even Kane would have to admit that it was a good assassination strike, but there was one flaw, and that was that he was still in tune with the flow. Kane's eyes might be looking away, but he could still dodge Zima's strike before turning around and using the entire torque of his body to land a kick on this one's temple.
Boom.
The kick blasted Zima's head into the ground, but he did not have time to worry about the brain trauma as he saw Kane's murderous gaze.
I am a kind.
Zima was not able to finish his sentence before Kane's finger pierced his eyeball, reaching all the way into his brain. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 297, Titaness Attack. Death, that was the only outcome Kane would give those who attempted to take his life, especially if they did it in such a disgusting way as Zima's sneak attack. Kane was able to relax, allowing his senses to capture everything happening around, not just the enemy in front of him. He immediately felt a burning sensation on his face, as if the sun had suddenly burst with power and his instincts were screaming danger like crazy. Thea was shock on his face as he looked into the sky and saw the High Blood Elder looking at him with wild rage and madness. The Titan had already made his energy explode and was in the process of sending what could only be described as a palm strike capable of splitting atoms. Kane knew that killing Zima would enrage the High Blood Elder, but never expected things to escalate to this level. What he failed to see due to the state of his senses was that after countering Zima's sneak attack, the High Blood Elder rose to the sky, shouting for him to stop. Everybody was shocked by the actions of the High Blood Elder, and before they could react, Kane had already killed Zima, and the old man sent a palm strike whose power matched that of the surface of the old world sun. The Blood Duke and Bloodless One were stunned by what was happening. Regardless of their personal feelings for the High Blood Elder, they always considered the old man a meticulous and cold-minded enemy. Never did they expect this one to act as a rabid dog, especially while the eyes of the Empire were in the Blood Sea. As soon as they saw that palm strike emerging from the high blood elder, the Duke flashed out of their seat with so much speed and force that they broke them, using all their power to reach Kane. However, every powerhouse watching the scene knew they would not make it in time. Kane stared at the plasma blood palm about to land on the battle arena, destroying everything, including him. This time, no one would save him, and he had finally reached the end of his journey. People reacted in many different ways when death arrived. Some felt fear and regret, while others shouted with fury and rage, but very few were able to rise above those primitive emotions. A small smile appeared on Kane's face as he saw that his end would come in the hands of a Titan's attack. He clenched his right fist and punched forward. It would not make a difference, but even in his last moment, he would fight.
The
moment the plasma palm reached the platform, it destroyed everything, leaving a sea of red plasma that hindered everybody's vision. No one could see the corpse of Kane, none that it mattered very much since that attack should have pulverized his body, just like the effect of a nuclear bomb on a normal human. Silence reigned after that blast since people in the amphitheater were still trying to process what had just happened. Even those in the purest path that hated Kane and wanted him dead could not believe what the High Blood Elder had done. The powerhouses on the podium of the purest path were the most concerned of all. They knew several forces across the Empire were seeing this battle, and the actions of the High Blood Elder had tainted the name of the Blood Sea and their movement. Even if they promulgated the ideology of being self-sufficient, the members of the purest path still understood they needed certain relationships with the rest of the Empire. However, who would trust and believe them now that their leader killed a young genius during a tantrum? That was just one of the problems, since Kane was a member of the Imperial Lightning Fort and disciple of one of the 9 pillars. Everybody knew the temper of the collapsing Lightning Duke and Zarak Valentine, and there was no way those two would simply ignore the death of someone so important to them and the army. Just like the powerhouses of the purest path expected, Zarak did not react calmly to what he saw. At first, Zarak's eyes widened with shock, and as he felt the power of the sea of red plasma where the battle arena used to be, he understood that there was no way Kane could have survived them.
Boom.
Zarak's ego wave burst with power as a blue force field rose into the sky like the hand of a divine demon full of killing intent. As killing intent flooded the air, storm clouds covered the entire Imperial Lightning Fort, extending for hundreds of kilometers. The rest of the pillars saw Zarak's ego wave rising into the sky with shock and awe. It immediately reached 20,000 meters, but that was far from its limit. 25,000, 27,000, 29,000, 31,000, 32,400, 32,700, 32,900. Finally, Zarak's killing intent, rage, and determination reached their zenith, making his ego wave burst to the next level. 33,000. Zarak's ego wave experienced an evolutive change when the blue force field reached 33,000 meters. The rage vanished from his eyes, only to be replaced by a coldness that could freeze the blood of anyone that gazed at them. The blue force field soon pulled back into Zarak's body. As he contained and stabilized all that power inside his ego eternal matrix, he turned his eyes toward the Blood Sea, ready to march forward.
Please wait a moment.
Just as Zarak was ready to march into the Blood Sea, Luther appeared in his path.
Are you going to stop me?
Zarak's voice was cold as he clenched his fists, and a monstrous blue light appeared in his eyes. Luther saw that, and his eyes narrowed before softly shaking his head.
I can no longer stop you. However, there were plans put in motion by the collapsing Lightning Duke in case of something like this before Kane's departure. Just wait a few minutes and you will understand.
Bloodless One stared at the plasma sea for a moment with shock before his face twisted with rage, before he focused on the High Blood Elder.
You fucking traitor.
The rage in Bloodless One heart was so much that he shouted those words without care for the ones listening. The Blood Duke did not say a word, but his eyes glowed with killing intent as he focused on the High Blood Elder. Under the cold gazes of the Blood Duke and Bloodless One, the High Blood Elder's eyes regained their focus, and there was a flash of shock. It was like he was just realizing what he had done. The old man stared at the Blood Duke and Bloodless One for a moment before glancing at the powerhouses of the Purest Path, inciting this one to rise into the sky. Although the powerhouses of the Purest Path were disturbed by the actions of the High Blood Elder, they did not hesitate to answer his call. The actions of the powerhouses of the Purest Path incited a reaction from those of the Integrationist Path, and soon dozens of Wave Kings were in the sky of the Blood Sea. Bloodless One saw a thin, middle-aged man appear next to the High Blood Elder, and could feel the power of this one matched his own.
Second Blood Elder.
Despite the enemy's strength, Bloodless One's coldness and killing intent did not diminish, and he was ready to fight.
Do not haste, no one wants a fight that could harm the Blood Sea.
The High Blood Elder spoke those words while looking at the people of the amphitheater, widening the eyes of all the powerhouses on both sides. Usually, when powerhouses of their level enter battle, they would rise to the highest level of the sky, so innocent people would not become collateral damage. That was an unspoken rule among powerhouses that one would respect even when facing enemies from the dark races. The Blood Duke clenched his fists as he understood that the High Blood Elder would not simply rise into the sky, but would have to be pushed there. Although he had the power, his attacks would send shock waves that might endanger the life of everybody that was not a Wave King. Pure disdain appeared on the faces of the powerhouses of the Integrationist Path as they gazed at the High Blood Elder. That man had spent nearly 100 years shouting about the importance of keeping the Blood Sea safe, but did not hesitate to use the life of their people as a shield. The High Blood Elder showed little concern with how those powerhouses saw him and focused on the Blood Duke.
I understand that my actions will generate some troubles in the Blood Sea, but we must be wise about it. That boy's death is irrelevant to us, and I sincerely doubt someone would dare to antagonize us just for it.
Just as the High Blood Elder prepared to continue his speech, a voice echoed across the amphitheater.
Who are you calling dead, you old bastard?
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 298, Civil War.
Who are you calling dead, you old bastard?
Shock appeared in the eyes of everybody who heard those words, and as they turned toward the sea of blood plasma, they saw Cain rising from it.
Impossible.
The High Blood Elder could not believe what he was seeing. Although he was still confused about the temporary madness that took over him when he attacked Cain, he knew that the palm strike contained his true power, capable of pulverizing even a Wave King. No matter how lucky or talented Cain was, he should have died instantly once the palm strike landed in the battle area. Yet, that was clearly not the case. In the Titan Tower from the Imperial Lightning fought, the pillars, including Zarak, were shocked as they saw Cain alive and well. The only one with a calm smile on his face was Luther. Before Cain left for the Blood Sea, the collapsing Lightning Duke had engraved a powerful rune in this one. It was a defensive spell that would automatically activate in case of an attack from someone above the Wave King's level. Luther's eyes suddenly widened as he heard a message and glanced at the rest of the people in the room. Zarak could not help but smile as he saw that Cain was still alive, but soon his eyes grew sharp again.
We must march immediately into the Blood Sea and take him out. The High Blood Elder might want to finish the job.
Luther immediately shook his head as he heard Zarak's concerns.
The collapsing lightning cocoon will remain over Cain's body for 30 minutes. Someone is already going to the Blood Sea to take him back, so there is no need to worry about... What?
A wave of shock assaulted Luther as he saw Cain's actions in the mirror and could not believe it. It was not just Luther, since Cain's next move filled with utter shock to everybody that saw him across the Empire. Cain's willpower burst with an incredible might as it began showing true domain over the waves surrounding him. The near-death experience and his resolve to fight even in the face of hopelessness allowed his ego wave to break through, reaching the late Wave King's level and evolving into the second realm. Cain had been controlling the power of mind over Wave for a while now, so as soon as his willpower reached the late stage, it was easy for him to evolve from mind over body to the next level instantly. Since he could now use the wave in the sky and earth as his personal energy pool, Kane's power grew much higher. Of course, his battle power was not at a level he could influence the fighting between the dozens of powerhouses of the Purist Path and Integrationist Path. However, right now, an extremely powerful wave surrounded his body in the form of a cocoon of lightning, and using his willpower, he could manipulate it. Kane could not transform it into a new spell or use it to enhance his astral wave, but he could unleash it all in a single direction, which was his plan. His arms could not endure the power of the collapsing Lightning Duke's wave, but there was a weapon inside his right capable of doing that. Slaughter appeared in Kane's hands, and his eyes burst with red light as he raised the machete, channeling all the dark lightning around him into it, before waving the weapon down. All of that took a long time to describe, but Kane had put it in motion since the moment he emerged from the sea of red plasma, using the shock on the powerhouse to take them by surprise.
Crack.
The machete shattered into dozens of small pieces, and all the bones in Kane's arms broke, but he managed to fire an energy cannon of the Titan level toward the High Blood Elder. Despite being an attack fired by a wave champion, it was essentially the full power of the collapsing Lightning Duke's spell, so its speed and power were higher than an old world's nuclear weapon. The High Blood Elder's eyes widened as he saw that energy cannon, and he could do nothing but put his arms above his chest, making two white bestial claws materialize in front of him in the form of a shield.
Boom.
As if understanding Kane's intent, the energy cannon did not explode when it landed on the High Blood Elder, instead pushing this hundreds of kilometers into the sky. Pure awe and astonishment assaulted the heart of everybody across the Empire when they saw how a young man managed to send a mighty Titan flying away. It cost him a natural holy weapon, but would make his name echo across the entire Godslayer humankind empire.
Boom.
Not even a second had passed when another blast occurred. This time the responsible was Bloodless One, who took the chance to land a kick on the second Blood Elder, also pushing this one into the sky before chasing after him. The Blood Duke's mind was working at full power as he attempted to decide his next step, but Bloodless One had already taken that decision from his hand. He glanced at the young man that initiated all this havoc and nodded.
It is war.
No more words were spoken as the Blood Duke flashed into the sky, going after the High Blood Elder. The Wave Kings of the Integrationist Path and Purist Path heard those words and felt the burst of energy in the sky hundreds of kilometers above them. Bloodless One and the Blood Duke were full of killing intent, going after the High Blood Elder and Second Blood Elder. That made everything clear for everybody else. Since their leaders were fighting with murderous intent, it was finally time to shred all pretenses and fight to the death as well. The animosity between both sides had reached a point where words could not fix things anymore. This was not the first clash between the Purist Path and Integrationist Path, since many battles with lethal outcomes had carried on over the last couple of years, but it was the first time they escalated things to the point of a civil war. The powerhouses of both sides rose dozens of kilometers into the air, reaching a point where they could fight using all their power without endangering the weak ones.
Boom.
Before the first clash between the Wave Kings in the sky could happen, they heard a thunderous sonic boom. As they looked down, they saw Kane flashing away from the amphitheater. Although it was true that Kane was severely wounded and no one expected him to meddle in the fight of the Wave Kings, running away before the battle even started did not leave a very good image. Mocking smiles appeared in the eyes of the people of the Purist Path as they saw Kane running away. In some measure, the young man had become the emblem of the Integrationist Path, so seeing him running away was humorous. However, all those smiles froze when they saw Kane heading into Blood Island, specifically to the Blood Pagoda. Right now, no one controlled the power of the Blood Pagoda since the Blood Duke and High Blood Elder neutralized each other's domain over the artifact. None of the Wave Kings could do something about it, so they just ignored it, but when they saw Kane moving toward the pagoda, they remembered something. All the Wave Kings had already investigated the young man who came out of nowhere and managed to take down a Wave King assassin, and hacking was among his skills. Although it was preposterous even to think that a Wave champion could hack into a Titan artifact like the Blood Pagoda, over and over again, Kane had proved to be capable of the impossible.
Stop HIM. Protect HIM.
The Wave Kings of the Purest Path and Integrationist Path shouted as they started their fight, using everything they had to kill the other side. Once they heard that command, the people in the amphitheater were the first to react. All of the Purest Path members rose into the air and were ready to flash after Cain. Even if none of them could match his strength, he had drained most of his energy and left with severe wounds, so together they had a chance. Ametria, the blood maiden of the Purest Path, was at the lead of the hundreds of Wave champions of the Purest Path, ready to go after Cain. However, she had not even taken a step when a group just as large as her blocked their path. Shura was leading the force of the Integrationist Path, and her eyes were full of killing intent as she glanced at Ametria and everybody else.
Take one more step, and we will kill everybody.
Ametria was surprised by Shura's coldness and killing aura, but she was not weakling. Her eyes grew cold as he led her force into battle. It was shocking news for the Empire. The Blood Sea, a power that could equal an entire sector, began a civil war. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 299, Stopping the Fight. Cain's eyes grew sharp as he focused on the Blood Pagoda and flashed at full speed toward this one. He could feel the battle behind him involving hundreds of Wave champions, but he could not afford to distract. Shura had led the people of the Integrationist Path that attended the final Blood Champion tournament into a defensive position, so the other side could not interrupt him. However, hundreds of Wave champions and Wave warriors were still in Blood Island and Blood City. Both sides had heard the order from the powerhouses, so battles did not take long to emerge across the city and island, with one side wanting to stop Cain's from reaching the Blood Pagoda and the other protecting him. Cain's ego wave showed him the ongoing battles and how the collateral damage would not take long to start affecting civilians and children. That only made him push himself even harder to reach the Blood Pagoda. Warriors of the Integrationist Path were doing all they could to give Cain an unobstructed path toward the Blood Pagoda, but some people of the Purest Path still managed to rise into the sky. For those weak Wave champions, it was practically suicide to face Cain head-on, and they knew it. However, in their minds, they were protecting their home and families from the evil outsider, and that was something worth dying for. Cain's eyes were cold as he saw people flashing toward him. There was fear in their eyes, but they were readying to sacrifice all in order to delay him.
All right.
A small sight came out of Cain's mouth as he pushed his mind to the limit, activating the flow. He could read every move and action those warriors did, allowing him to pass through them without harming them. Shock and confusion appeared on the warriors of the Purest Path as they saw Cain simply flashing past them, dodging all their attacks and spells as he made his way into the Blood Pagoda. Everybody saw the battles of the tournament, and it was clear that Cain did not have a problem killing people, but they failed to understand the reason behind his actions. Cain's nature was that of a hero. It might be a twisted one fueled by revenge and murderous intent, but that is how he saw himself, and just killing people that wanted to protect their homes was not something he would do. The Blood Pagoda was already within his reach, and just as nearly a dozen of the attacks were about to clash with him, he made the astral wave on the sole of his feet explode, propelling his body like a rock, dodging everything and allowing him to reach the structure. Powerhouses of both sides saw that, and while smiles appeared on those of the Integrationist Path and anxiety on those of the Purest Path, none of them got overexcited. Even if Cain could hack the Blood Pagoda, it would take him a long time to do that, and it would also mean that hundreds, if not thousands, of people would die fighting around him.
ZNNNNN.
However, once again, Cain did what everybody else thought was impossible, hacking the Blood Pagoda less than 5 seconds after touching this one.
It cannot be happening.
One of the strongest powerhouses of the Purest Path shouted when he saw that. Cain was simply too fast, and now that he had control over the Blood Pagoda, the casualties of the warriors of the Purest Path would rise exponentially. 4,000 Destiny Force used to raise the potency of the hacking tool. Hacking of Blood Pagoda completed. Vessel has complete control over the structure. Cain smiled as he gained access to the Blood Pagoda. He had lost a lot of the destiny Foss he had just gained by obtaining the flow, raising to the second realm, and attacking the High Blood Elder, but it was worth it. Not wasting a single second, he immediately activated the powers of the Blood Pagoda. Everybody saw how the Blood Pagoda's energy burst, but a massive red plasma net emerged from the structure instead of 100 lethal energy beams. The net was incredibly fast, encompassing everybody beneath the Wave King level in it. Shura had no idea what was happening, but the red plasma net covered her and all the warriors of the Integrationist Path, just like it did with those of the Purist Path. People were confused since it did not make sense for Kain to attack everybody, but soon they understood that the plasma net was not a weapon. Once the plasma net had covered every man, woman, and child in the Blood Sea that was not a Wave King, it suppressed their powers, stopping them from fighting before contracting itself. In less than a minute, millions of people were all stuck together around the Blood Pagoda, covered in a red cocoon capable of enduring the attacks of a Titan, much less the collateral damage of a fight between Wave Kings. Shock appeared in the eyes of the powerhouses when they saw the way Kain used the Blood Pagoda. It did not take long for that emotion to change into something else. In the case of the Integrationist Path, it was pride and admiration. They were proud of following a path that accepted people like Kain in their home. As for those on the Purist Path, there was nothing but shame. How could they justify their views when even outsiders cared more about their common people than their own leader? The fight between the powerhouses did not stop, but while the fighting spirit of the Integrationist Path burned, many on the Purist Path were finding it hard to focus. It was only at this point that Kain finally allowed himself to relax. His entire body was tense as he stood on the top of the Blood Pagoda and focused on the battles in the distance. The battle between the nearly 100 powerhouses from the Integrationist Path and Purist Path was truly a sight to behold. A Wave King had similar power to a small nuclear weapon, so dozens of them fighting was like seeing the entire military force of the two greatest nations in the old world clashing head-on. Just the shock waves their battle unleashed was incredible. The amphitheater made to resist the fight between P.E.K.K.A Wave champions had shattered to pieces after 10 minutes, despite no direct attack landing on it. However, even that mighty display of power between the powerhouses fell short compared to the fight occurring thousands of kilometers above sea level. The Blood Duke and Bloodless One were fighting against the High Blood Elder and Second Blood Elder, and by the might of those explosions, it was clear that neither side was holding back. If Titans were to fight in the old world, they would have the power to burn the atmosphere, killing the entire world. There was no way to describe them other than weapons of planetary destruction. Only a world like Ether could hold fighting between this type of monster without suffering actual damage. Kain's arms were healing at a shocking speed under the power of the radiance of life. The sun, said, had grown even more powerful after the evolution of the Ego Eternal Path of Power to the second realm. Channeling the attack of the collapsing Lightning Duke's energy into a cannon did a lot of damage to his arms, but since the one that took the brunt of the recall was Slaughter, there was no irreversible damage. And he was not just healing his arms. Several mid-quality wave crystals went into his Devourer dimension, while at the same time sending some into his stomach. Finally, he was also increasing his mastery of mind over wave. His willpower had risen to the point where he could channel it into his own astral wave or take control of the life wave in the surroundings. Both paths granted him a much greater endurance and a great burst of battle power. It took Kain less than 15 minutes to fully heal the arm damage. Although his energy pool had not fully recovered, it was enough to rejoin the fray. His eyes grew sharp, and he took a deep breath.
Wait.
Just as Kain was about to march into the battlefield, he heard a voice and looked down at the people inside the red plasma net. Shura was looking at him with eyes full of fear. She knew Kain and what this one would do after healing his injuries, but she did not want him to once again risk his life.
It is too dangerous. Don't do it.
Kain's eyes showed a little surprise when he heard that. The woman knew what he was about to do. A small smile appeared on his face as he saw the dread and worry in Shura's face, but he simply shook his head.
It is in my nature.
Those were his last words before he flashed to the sky, ready to join the Wave King's battlefield. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 300, Fighting a Wave King Head-On. Jason Sampson, the grandfather of Jeremy, the first blood champion that Cain killed, was viciously attacking Aslan Jams, Martin's father. Both men followed the astral rebirth path of power, but Aslan was at the middle wave king level while Jason only reached the early level. In a one-on-one fight, Aslan would have the upper hand without a problem, but that was not the case. Aslan's flaming fist clashed with Jason's stone hand, sending this one flying away, but before he could chase after his enemy, a giant tail bathed in blood came crashing down on him. That attack came from a middle-aged woman. Her essence wave displayed the might of the middle wave king, and her spells were extremely fast and carried a formidable force. Aslan's eyes grew sharp as he clasped his hand, making his body glow before a blast of blood fire emerged from his body, shattering the tail. However, he had just taken care of that threat when a stone fist landed on his chest, sending him flying away. Jason showed a vicious smile as he saw the felt bones cracking under the might of his fist and flashed toward Aslan, ready to unleash a devastating onslaught. However, just as Jason was about to reach striking distance, his eyes widened. He felt a presence appear out of nowhere, and while he could not dodge it, he managed to focus his astral wave on his back, protecting it from the incoming kick.
All right.
A scream of pain emerged from Jason, but that was just the beginning since the kick sent him toward Aslan, who would not waste the chance.
All right.
Jason shouted even louder as a fire downward kick landed on his left shoulder, fracturing it and sending his body diving down into the blood sea. Aslan glanced at the newcomer and saw it was no other than Cain. The duo exchanged glances, but just as the middle-aged man turned toward the blood sea, he felt a coldness coming from the young man. Aslan nodded before turning toward the middle-aged woman and flashing toward her. Jason was no longer his prey. Cain's eyes were cold as he activated the flow, focusing on the figure rising from the blood sea. Everything around him grew dark as his mind focused on a single target. Of course, he had already learned his lesson about the danger of focusing only on the enemy in front of you, but he was not alone. Apex was already on the lookout, using the scan force field to analyze the battlefield and ready to guide Cain in case an external threat emerged. His astral wave burst with more and more power as his ego wave took control of the life wave in the air and made it his own power.
Brat, you dare.
Jason roared with rage as he rose into the sky, and his eyes burned with silver light as he stared at Cain. He could not believe that a young man would dare to attack him and, even worse, dare to fight against him alone. There was no way he could cleanse that shame without killing Cain.
Bloodstone giant.
Jason activated his ultimate card, and his body began to mutate. His skin transformed into bloodstones, and that chance was not just external since even his inner organs were covered in them, pushing the strength and endurance of his body to the next level. Cain could feel the strength of Jason and was sure that this one was even stronger than the Wave King Assassin, especially in a direct battle. He had already used the initial clash to scan this one, and the system was displaying that information for him now. Scanning target. Scan of target completed. Name, Jason Sampson. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, astral rebirth, early wave king. Lineage, wave talent, limit tier 7. Stats. Strength, 61.1. Agility, 47.8. Vitality, 68.1. Wave, 60.1. Blood energy, 51.4. During his fight with Zima, Cain's battle power only reached the bottom of the Wave King's level, and those that came from great powers like the Blood Sea had access to superb techniques, making their strength even greater. Luckily for Cain, the evolution of his ego wave did not just come with domain over the life waves surrounding him. His sun seed had also evolved, awakening the second skill from the Empyrean sun visualization technique. Right now, the radiance of life flooded his body with energy and vitality, but a sun was much more than just life.
Radiance of power.
Cain's words ignited a dark golden force that raised his body's strength and hardness. His muscles bulged as it grew stronger, growing nearly 20 centimeters. Vessel's physical strength and endurance improve by 250%. Although the size of Kane's body could not compare with the 4-meter-tall stone giant, his aura did not fall behind. Jason's eyes widened as he felt the strength of Kane's body, and the killing intent in his heart burst as he flashed forward. Kane did not just wait, and his eyes grew sharp as he clenched his fist, flashing toward his enemy as a sonic power gathered on his blood claw.
Sonic blood fist. Bloodstone punch. Boomerth.
A resounding blast echoed across the battlefield when Kane and Jason's fists clashed. The first was forced to move 7 steps back, while the second only had 4, making it clear how it had greater strength, but that was not important at this moment. The powerhouses of both sides saw when Kane entered the battlefield, and while some were wondering about the pertinence of a 16-year-old young man in this place, that punch erased any doubt. Kane just showed everybody that he had the right to participate in this battlefield and to call himself a powerhouse. Smiles appeared on the warriors of the Integrationist Path as they welcomed the new addition to their forces, while those of the Purist Path could not help but frown. Jason trembled as he saw that Kane managed to push him back, and the shame in his heart exploded.
I will kill you.
The middle-aged man's energy pool burst as he unleashed all he had, flashing back into the fray. Kane's eyes were sharp since he could not afford to lose focus. The flow showed every move that Jason would make, but that did not mean he could dodge and counter everything. It was easier in Zima's case since the young man used simple attacks, but Jason used blood flow fury at a very high level. As they exchanged blows, Kane's aura grew more pronounced as the red light in his eyes burst with power, pushing his ego wave to the limit. The radiance of power coursed through his veins, enhancing his physical attributes to superhuman levels. His muscles bulged with newfound strength, his every movement exuding power. Jason, driven by a mix of fury and determination, managed to take the blood flow fury technique to a new level during the fight. His attacks became a storm of blood and stone, an onslaught that seemed nearly impossible to evade. Yet, Kane's agility allowed him to dodge and weave through the attack, his movements guided by the flow. Kane's pupils narrowed as he saw an opening. With a burst of speed, he closed the distance between himself and Jason. His blood claw ignited with sonic energy as he unleashed the sonic blood fist.
Boom. Crack.
The punch struck Jason's stone form with a deafening boom, cracking the bloodstone exterior and causing the ground to tremble. Jason roared in pain and frustration, with blood leaking from his mouth. He retaliated with a powerful blood-stone punch, aiming for Kane's head. Unfortunately for the stone giant, Kane saw the attack's pattern thanks to the flow. His reflexes were pushed to the limit, narrowly avoiding the devastating blow before countering with an uppercut. That blow should have shaken Jason's brain inside his skull, but the bloodstone giant strengthened the middle-aged man's spine. He clenched his teeth and endured the pain before connecting a punch in Kane's chest. Kane's eyes widened as he felt his ribs cracking before being sent flying away. He regained control over his body immediately, and the radiance of life healed the small cracks on his bones, but that blow told him just how dangerous Jason was. Jason would have wanted to unleash a barrage of attacks on Kane, but while that last attack did not paralyze him, it did weaken him. Kane and Jason glanced at each other, and there was no question in their eyes. Both saw the killing intent of the other before flashing forward. The battle between the duo was impressive, but dozens like it were happening across the sky of the Blood Sea, and the one above them was even more shocking. From time to time, flashes of light would illuminate the sky for hundreds of kilometers as the titans in the sky were unleashing their full-power attacks. It was like seeing dozens of nuclear weapons explode every minute. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.